Welcome back to Coffee, Conversations, and Badasses podcast. I'm your host, Dustin Hayes, and you don't want to miss this episode. You're going to figure out how Michael Molthan escaped out of prison and got sober. But it's not how you think. Michael, how the hell are you doing, buddy?
Dustin, good to see you, man. I love what you're doing, and your producer and the lighting and the sound, and this is great. I love this chair. We can go as long as you want.
That is so freaking funny, man, because I was like, man, I kind of want to change these chairs.
Man, they're comfortable. It's been a long week here in California, so it's good to be here.
That's important. So as long as you're comfortable, then you know what? Maybe I have to keep these. Maybe these are the chairs.
And they're nice to me. Better in prison.
Well, do you have chairs in prison in your cells?
No chairs. Nothing nothing that you can move around. It's a little steel stool that's where you eat. So or your bunk. That's where you sit.
That's it.
That's it.
So prison, man. You didn't just book this on Airbnb.
No, no. It was a resort that I did not want to go to.
No, you're not giving it 5 stars?
No, it's actually when a prison's good, they get a 1-star rating. So if a prison gets a 5-star rating, it's because they didn't do their job, right? So,
well, what happened that landed you in prison?
Wow, a lot of things, but today as I look at my life through God's perspective, what happened. The reason why I went to prison and I was put on a detour, so I could have this awakening that I can start looking at life through God's perspective and not mine. But I am a recovering drug addict alcoholic. I started drinking alcohol when I was 10 years old, and I drank alcohol and I did drugs for the effect. That's the honesty of recovery. It wasn't because I was dealt a bad deck, abused, sexually abused, betrayed, and all that. A lot of things that we all deal with, but I did it for the effect because I wanted to feel like everybody around me looked. And as this stopped working in 2017, I was continuing to do drugs and alcohol because I wanted to feel good about the bad decisions I was making. And so that's how this disease is cunning, baffling, and powerful. It speaks to me, my own voice, and it's deadly, and it kills us.
Well, absolutely.
Yeah. And so that's, I got my first arrest in 2009. And it was in a place I said I would never go. And when I got in there, I got my first mugshot. And I literally just said to myself, which number one is dangerous, but I meant it, I'm never doing this again. I'm done. I'm over. And I meant it, with every ounce of blood in my body. I really meant it. And I got bonded out, and I had a 2nd-degree felony. I got pulled over with a large amount of cocaine and intoxicated. And I got my first mugshot. And, it's all new to me. I grew up in a well-to-do family, and I was very successful in business and was accomplishing all the worldly achievements. And it really affected me, that first mugshot, and seeing all the people in there and the way that they live, and the guards knew their name, and, they're coming back. And when I got bonded out, I got back to my place, and I said, I just need one drink I got some anxiety. And then 26 mugshots later, I had a spiritual awakening in the
26 mugshots.
Total of 27 mugshots. So
27.
In 6 years, I did over 4 years incarcerated. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
so
were they all alcohol related?
Yeah, they were, alcohol and drugs and probation violations and, not showing up. And, Judge Jennifer Bennett, in Dallas, Texas is where I live and I'm from. She had enough, and she finally said, "You're going to mind somebody, you're going to mind me." So I was in and out of prison and, different places and trying to get clean. I could just, I'd get out, the gas of the world would hit me and I'd be drunk and high and within 24 hours, until I had this spiritual awakening, while incarcerated, July 7th, 2017, which I'm sure we'll get into here in a little bit, that changed my life forever, which eventually is why I'm sitting here today in California, talking to you.
Why do we go through these destructive modes? Like, we already have enough going on.
Right.
And our first instinct if you're a drug addict or alcoholic, it's like, oh, you know what? I just need that one last one. This one's going to take care of it. And I'm never going to do this again.
Well, it's insanity, and it is a disease. When I tour and I speak, I have it's called the We Are All Addicts tour. Everyone is an addict. Everyone. Drug addiction and alcoholism, has a stigma to it because of the consequences are so severe. And my actions are so visible and severe. Why do we do it? For me personally, I was chasing that first, I never remember I never remember put your hands behind your back. I never remembered all that stuff. I just remembered that first, And so I was always chasing that feeling. Drugs and alcohol gave me this euphoria where when I would go into the future in my mind alone, and we start this at a very young age, where we start thinking about the future and we're in our head alone. For me, it would create anxiety and fear and paranoia. And I didn't like that feeling. So I didn't think anybody else felt that way. So I would shift the view and I would go to the past. And when I'd go to the past, I would get angry, resentful, depressed. A lot of people fight with depression and regret. And I didn't like that feeling. So I would do this game in my head going back and forth, back and forth. Meanwhile, I wasn't recognizing that I wasn't thinking about today, what was really happening. So I was going back and forth and back and forth. And when I took that first drink and that first drug, it gave me that sense of ease and comfort. And it gave me this euphoria of being in the now. So the future quieted up, the past quieted up. And so in order to stay in the now, so I could feel like everybody around me looked, I would do more and more drugs and more alcohol.
Was that because you were surrounded by drug addicts and alcoholics?
Not really. I mean, it was in our family, and which was another confusing deal because we seemed to be a very put together family. My dad was very successful, and mom was a stay-at-home mom. But behind closed doors, it was very confusing for me. But outside, the house, going to the country club and all that, I'm like, this is not who we are. It's just a totally different look. But, but for me, I was chasing visible things to try to fix my invisible problems. So what is addiction? What is addiction? And the definition of addiction is simply this. It's the street name for spiritual stronghold. Okay. False idols. Okay. Addiction is a person, place, thing, or a thought that has become my source. So a lot of people can relate to that because people could, when they want to feel in the now, they can get into work, they can get into exercise, they can get into food, gambling, pornography, service work, helping others. I mean, I see a lot of people do that. Real busy, moving their feet. They're very busy, and they can't sit down because they're trying to find how to get into the now because they don't want to be alone by themselves, right? Because they get into fear. And so we are all addicts. And recognizing that is where we get this sense of ease in living in the now. And I've come to realize that living in the now, right here, right now, is the safest place in the world because that's where God's at. That's what I found out. And I learned that in prison.
You learn living in the now, and this is where God's at. In prison. I
learned that. And the way that I learned that was on my 27th mugshot. My last drink and drug was May 29th, 2017. And, if they would have let me out on May 30th, I would have been ripping and running again. But they put me in, I've never put hands on anybody, but they put me in this aggravated assault tank. They categorize, your charges and all this stuff. And they put the chomos, child molesters together, and they put, just the,
no, I don't know.
Yeah, so they it's called classification. They'll put the child molesters together. They'll put the murderers together. They'll put the different levels of crime. They put those people together, right? And they made a mistake. They put me in the murder tank, and so I'm in this lockdown tank with all these murderers, and that's where I went. And we were locked. I was in a 2-man cell, and for for a long time, for almost 18 months. And it was rock and roll. I mean, I saw a guy get killed in front of me, saw a guy commit suicide, and they're fighting all the time. And, I'm the only white guy in there. So and it's kind of intimidating because they're checking me, they're like going, this guy's like, he's a cop or he's a punk, which is gay, because I was real proper. And so when I got in there, I just stayed to myself. But when they'd open the doors.
So that's how they classified you in prison? As either a punk, which means you're gay.
Yeah. That's the prison talk. But me being a white guy coming into this tank, I was the minority, right? And so it was at first it was a really weird feeling. They weren't doing it to me. I was doing it to me, So
you had like imposter syndrome a little bit going on?
Yeah. So, but they were so, at the end of the day, they were so good to me. But anyway, so I'm in there and, this guy comes in and he's got this book, it's just a real boring white cover, and he just gave it to me, and I just threw it on my bunk. And, every time the doors would open, I would just pacing around the day room, just pacing because I'm in my head. I'm like, I don't have any dope and I don't have anything. And I know I'm done. I'm out of there. And when they locked me down, this old guy was my cellmate, which is my cellie. He was 75 years old, doing life for murder. And they called him Ooh-wee,
Why'd they call him Ooh-wee?
Ooh-wee. So apparently when he was a kid on the streets, he had polio in one leg. And, he walked down the streets, the girls say, Ooh-wee, there you go. So it stuck. So his name was Ooh-wee. And my name was Rabbit. You have a nickname when you go to prison. You don't use your free world name. So they called me Rabbit because I was moving around so much. And so Uwe told me, he says, Rabbit, you got to calm down. You're making everybody nervous. They're going to chew you off the bone. But, what happened was, back to like, how did I find out living in now in prison? Here's a very highly educated, successful man, in here, one of the most well-known high-end luxury home builders, in the area. And, I'm in here and this man simply says, what's that book say? And I said, well, it says Detours by Dr. Tony Evans. He goes, oh, I love me, Dr. Tony Evans. I said, well, who's that? And he says, oh, he's a pastor in Oak Cliff outside of Dallas. And Oak Cliff is there's some areas of it that's the hood, And I'm like, well, cool. He says, hey, will you do me a favor, Rabbit? And I said, what's that? He says, will you read it to me? I said, what are you talking about? He says, I can't read, I can't write. And I got really cool handwriting. And so
the 75-year-old man.
Yeah. And so, I'm living in a 4x9 cell. The door's locked, 20 hours, 18 to 20 hours a day. And so I start reading it to him. It's just black words on white paper. And he's like, oh yeah, reread that. And I read it to him, and this book's laid out. And it's the story of Joseph, how Joseph in the Old Testament was, placed on these detours in his life, and how God used him in all the situations that he was betrayed and sold to slavery. And it's just a story to me. And I can really relate to this. I'm like, man, so I'm reading this, and Dr. Evans in there has quotes, and it talks about forgiveness, and it talks about, realizing when you hit rock bottom that all the times the rock bottom was God. And I'm like, whoa. And I realized that 4 days went by, and I wasn't anxious, paranoid, depressed, scared. And I had this awakening that, for the first time, I was living in the now as a result of serving someone else. I was getting out of self, serving someone else. And then as the tank opened up, people wanted me to read to them, and the entire tank could not read or write. And so I was reading this.
You have a whole population in prison.
45 men.
That couldn't read or write. They're in there for murder.
Bangers. These guys are bangers, and they meant to murder people, And as I observed and listened to them and watched them and saw these common denominators, as I could relate to, they had no relationship with their father. They had no dad. And so I was reading to them, and I would actually read every night at dinner. I'd get up and read something out of this. And then it led me to this gangbanger gave me his Bible because he couldn't read it. It was the Living Recovery Bible, the New Living Translation. And I was reading it by myself. And And it was starting to make sense to me. And I would keep reading detours to these guys, and there was a connection, but it was helping me. And this whole tank came together, and we became serving one another. And I became tank boss. I was the tank boss, and the guards were amazed.
What does that mean? What does a tank boss mean?
Means like, everybody's coming to you. You're running the tank, and it's usually somebody, a gangbanger, that's, run the tank. But I became the tank boss, and I was the leader. And guards will speak to the leader, and they were blown away how this tank had come so close together and was so healthy. No fighting, everybody's calm. And it was just the spirit came over this tank and just fulfilled it. I see it now. I didn't know what was happening, but I saw what was changing.
That is so wild to think that could be an environment in prison.
Yeah. So on May 29th, I got apprehended. And on July 7th, 2017, I was in my top bunk and I couldn't breathe. This was after, reading this stuff and digging into this book, Detours, and I couldn't breathe. And I sat up in my top bunk, and I felt like I was having a heart attack, but it wasn't like medical. It wasn't alarming or scaring. And I just took this deep breath, and I just like exhaled, and all this anger and resentment and all this stuff starts coming out of my body. I took this deep breath, and I was just full of like ice water, all this love. I mean, this unbelievable love I was feeling that was like supernatural. And then that's when, this God, the Spirit, and I accepted Christ, and he came into my life, and it changed my life forever. And then I caught chain, they transferred me to Central Texas, and I got down to Central Texas, and they put me in another rock and roll murder tank, same thing. And I'm sitting over by myself, and I got my Bible, my book Detours with me. They don't know me from Adam. And I'm sitting there just, doing me, and an inmate comes up to me and goes, "Hey man, what are you doing?" He goes, "I like your handwriting." I said, "I'm just doing me, I wasn't this jailhouse preacher, you know what I mean? Right. I was just doing me.
But your handwriting is phenomenal too.
Oh, thanks.
You sent me a couple of things. I was like, dude, that rocks.
Yeah, they like it. So, and so he says, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm just doing me." And he says, "What are you reading?" And I told him I was reading, and he says, "What's that say?" I said, "Well, read it." And he goes, "I can't read. I can't write." And that's when I looked up. I go, "I see you. I see you." So he took me there, and the same thing happened in that tank. And it became very close to him. And then on October 13th, 2017, they came over the speaker, and they said, "Michael Molthan, bunk and junk." And the whole tank's going nuts, and like, what? And even the guards didn't even understand. They're like, "You're not free. You got another 2 years to go." And the state of Texas, they called it a technicality, but the state of Texas, as a result of me finally forgiving everyone who did me wrong and accepting it and looking at it through God's perspective, to answer that question, why would you allow something to happen to me? When I truly forgave him, he opened up and he set me free. And I literally just in my head, I said, "God, what do you want me to do?" He says, "I want you to walk, and through thoughts and feelings." And I shared in that I Am Second film, one of the films that's been done on me, that, it wasn't, I thought that was witchcraft, you know what I mean? But it was the Holy Spirit speaking to me through thoughts and feelings, and it said, "Walk." So I traveled 300 miles to turn myself in, and my judge had heard what had been happening.
So wait, hold on.
Yeah.
Back that up.
Yeah.
So they say, was it say bunk and junk?
Mm-hmm.
And you still have 2 years left on your term.
Yep.
And they released you out of prison.
Yeah.
Was that obviously you didn't break out of prison.
No.
Even though I said prison break, you didn't go out, break it out of prison, chisel, hammer, makeshift tools.
No.
It was a technicality on the penal system or on the correctional system that set you free. And then as you were free, now you're thinking you're a free man, right?
Yeah. I mean,
at that point,
I was kind of confused. I was like going, maybe it was a technicality, but I want to turn myself in and do my time.
So they didn't do a search. They didn't have a warrant out for your arrest.
No.
They didn't have anything like that.
No, before the guards even knew that I wasn't supposed to be let out. And they pulled it up in the state of Texas, says he's clear. I mean, this is a biblical story, miracle kind of like thing for me, and
how often does this happen?
Never. It was the first time.
I would say that's pretty biblical. I say that's pretty amazing, miraculous.
Yeah.
I mean,
and so I just, I turned myself in and Judge Bennett said, there's obviously something, and she actually, some people that had, done some time and they came back to visit her. They said, there's this man that I was locked up with that's changed my life, by reading to me. And word got back to her of this transformation of me because I confused her. It was like, wait a minute, why does this guy keep coming back and getting arrested? It was like, this doesn't make sense. And so, but she heard about this transformation and she says, I'm not going to get in the way of it. And she set me free. She said, go pay it forward. And that's what I'm doing today.
Wow.
Yeah. It's 6 years, it's almost 7 years.
That's a crazy story. When I first heard it, I was like, what in the world? What's going on? Really? Like
right.
It was that easy.
Right.
And if you really just do good things will come.
Yes. But for me, what it was to make the choice not to stop doing things for me, and that's to do things for others and to serve, expecting nothing in return. And, like M2 The Rock, the whole thing, I didn't sit in prison and like say, I'm going to be a public speaker and have a podcast and, have this great story and go out and change. Never entered my mind. And like what I'm doing today is like everything that M2 The Rock, when you look at it like this right here, I've never reached out to any, it happens like our connection, how we made was a friend of a friend that said, hey, you need to check out M2, and it all worked out. Right. And that's, I'm all about attraction, not promotion. And, that's how it's all worked out. And it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger as a result of what I'm still doing today. And basically I'm still reading to people and sharing my story, in my faith by my actions.
Stories are powerful.
Oh, absolutely.
And people don't understand how stories can change lives. And us men and women as well.
Absolutely.
Opening up and being vulnerable about what's happened in our life.
Right.
One, it does two things. Every time you heal, or every time you say your story, every time you speak your story, it has less ownership over you.
That's right.
You're releasing that every single time.
That's right.
Two, your story's helping somebody else.
That's right.
Giving them inspiration, motivation, and maybe changing that mindset.
Right. Well, it's, the way that I'm not on this campaign to, it's not about me. It's not about me. It's about my experiences that I went through. My goal today, my mission is...
Hold on, we're going to get there.
Okay.
We're not talking about that mission yet.
Okay.
We're going to save that to the end.
Okay.
Because people need to know the mission.
Yeah.
Because the mission is important.
Yeah.
It's hugely important. But your life hasn't always been on that trajectory, especially when you're growing up as a kid.
Right.
Yeah.
You
didn't always have this view, this outlook.
No, not at all.
And some of this stuff and the glamour, what people saw you outside in public was not what's happening inside the house. Two different worlds were going on.
That's right. Exactly right.
And you spoke a little bit about your dad. Was your dad an alcoholic?
No, I've spilled more alcohol than my dad's drank. He maybe had 2 beers a year. That was it. I had other family members that were, as an alcoholic, the disease of drug addiction and alcoholism, the most frustrating thing for everybody is it's the only disease that has to be self-diagnosed. I can't say that someone's an alcoholic. I can see the behaviors, okay, and recognize it. And the reason why I recognize it is because I did it, but you can't sit there and diagnose someone as an addict or an alcoholic. But I was surrounded by it, a lot of confusion. And then, the sexual abuse, by my grandfather, who was a cop, growing up.
Your grandfather, a cop, serve and protect.
On my mom's side.
On your mom's side, was sexually abusing you.
Yes. Yeah, I kept that a secret for a long time. And, I was a loner. I always had a lot of people around me and everything like that. But I never had a best friend. I never had anybody close. I didn't do slumber parties. I didn't go into showers and, stuff like that because it was just these symptoms of, sexual abuse, which I didn't know.
It was the triggers.
Yeah.
Those were triggers.
And we'll get into that story because as a result of forgiveness, and we talk about resentments, the number one offender that's killing the human race is resentments. And, when I have a resentment, it's because I play a role in it. And it's like, wait a minute, you played a role in your grandfather sexually abusing you? And I said, absolutely, I did.
And you forgave him?
The role I played in it was I chose to hold on to the resentment. And it festered where I was hurting other people, including myself. And when I chose to hold on to that resentment and I looked at the role I played in it, and truly forgave him, which was part of the awakening in prison, God flexed his muscle and showed the supernatural. And I got a great story about that, is that I was driving to a place to speak, and I just kind of didn't know what I was talking about. And I go to this place and walk in there, and there's the men's bathroom, and there's a wall urinal, 2 of them in the stall, and the guy's in the wall urinal. I can't go next to him. I just never could. And I wait for the guy to get out, and I go in there. So when I come out into the room to speak to this group, it's actually at a treatment center, I shared that story, just what just happened. Because that's what I do. I just transparent to share what I'm feeling and what's going on. 2 guys were bawling, crying on the front row. One guy comes up to me and just hugs me and says, "You saved my life," because that's exactly what I struggled with. I didn't think anybody thought like that. And as I was driving back, looking at it, processing it, that's where I really started seeing things through God's perspective. I'm like going, wow, God's using my grandfather now for me to share the story, and it's help this man. 2 months later, my emails are blowing up from all over the country on how my story and my show and everything I'm doing is saving their life and saving all these people's lives. And I'm like, what is going on? And little did I know that by me being transparent and forgiving and accepting the role I play in it and sharing this story in this one event, okay, that guy's dad was the president of Securus Telecommunication, which is government communication for all FBI, White House, courthouses, every jail, every prison, that he put into the rock on every single tablet in every jail, in every prison in the country. So,
wow.
So this show right here will be on the tablet where every inmate will hear this show that you and I are doing.
Wow, that's amazing.
As a result of forgiveness. So God is using that situation for good.
He could do a lot of great things, God.
Yeah.
Many, many great things. Yeah. And we're going to take a break.
Okay.
When we get back from break, I'm going to tell you how I questioned my faith and I didn't think God was real anymore.
Let's talk about that.
We're going to take a break, but remember, this show couldn't be made possible without Dream Team with EXP Realty. Give them a call if you're in San Diego and wanting a home, sell a home, or do anything with a house, give those guys a call. And don't forget to go to our Patreon, become a member, $3 a month, and you get some great, great content with it. Early access, live recordings, and a chance to win Red, White, and Badass Brew coffee every single month. We're going to be back. Hey, Cat Badasses. Our Patreon is live and accepting memberships right now. And for only $3 a month, you get some cool benefits with it. Chance to win Red, White, and Badass Brews coffee every month and exclusive content, just to name a few. So go to the link, go to our Patreon account, and become a Cab Badass member. Welcome back, badasses. If you haven't listened yet, you should have, because we got Michael Molthan here in the studio. But this wouldn't be possible without our sponsors, Next Level Lender and Go Man Go Productions. Also, don't forget the Patreon. Go become a member. So we were just talking about Christianity, Spirit of God, and I really second guess that God existed. I was at my worst, and my girlfriend at the time was at my dinner table, and we were sitting there, and I am at this time have a lot of suicidal ideologies.
Yeah.
Still fighting this demon inside me and going not just what's happened in the last year or 2 years, but really what's happened in my whole entire life. Because like you, I also am a victim of child abuse and child sexual assault.
Yeah.
And my life at the time, I just didn't want to be there. I didn't want her in my life. I didn't want anything in life, but she was kind of a rock for me as well. So it was a good person to have in my life at the time. And I was at my dinner table and I told her, you know what? I don't think I believe in God anymore. And she watched Greg Rochelle from Live TV. Do you know who that is? Yeah. So she watched him on iPhone or iPad or whatever on Sundays. And I wasn't going to church, or I wasn't doing anything with the church. And so she looks at me, she's like, just stunned. And she didn't have anything to really say. So I was like, all right, that's that. And we were talking, and my phone goes off, and I look at it, and I get a message on Facebook Messenger from the pastor of my church. We're talking about 10 minutes after I just told her, I do not believe in God. I don't think he exists. And I get a Facebook message from Brandon. He's like, hey man, you've been on my mind.
Wow.
Can I take you out to lunch next week?
That's what's up.
And I looked at it and I chuckled, and I told her name was Megan. Well, that's funny. I guess God uses Facebook Messenger too.
Yeah.
And I chuckled, and I just let it sit there for a minute, because now I'm reeling into this thought of like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Are you serious? So I go back to it. Yeah, man, let's meet up. So we meet up, and I think it was Chili's in Santee. We eat Chili's, man. It was good little talk, good conversation. Yeah. He's like, hey, what's really going on with you? And I don't want to talk to him. I'm shilling up because I didn't really tell my story. I didn't talk about myself. I didn't do that.
Yeah.
And he's like, look, you have a lot of pain. What's going on? So I told him a little bit what's going on with me, and my daughter who attempted suicide, my oldest daughter. He's like, dude, you're going through a lot. He goes, what do you need help with? I was like, well, I'm trying to get her into therapy. I can't get any therapy. They're booked up for 6 months. And I think 6 months from now, it's going to be too late.
Yeah.
He's like, well, let me see what I can do. He goes, but are you okay financially? I'm like, well, no. At this point, I'm like behind on my mortgage almost. And, but I didn't tell him. I was like, yeah, I'm all right. He goes, hey, I got $2,000 for you. I don't know what it'll do for you, but hopefully it'll make your life a little easier today. And I was like, wow. Well, I started crying.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a grown man, start bawling like a baby.
Yeah.
In Chili's.
Yeah.
So we hug and we stay in contact. My daughter gets into therapy. And now I could never question if God is real again, because I didn't even pray. It wasn't even a prayer.
Yeah.
I didn't ask him for help. I didn't say, God, man, this one time, I think we've all had that prayer, right?
Right.
This one time, if you help me out, I swear to God, I'll never look at porn again.
Yeah.
Or I'll never do something again. It was nothing like that. This was purely out of the blue, just dropped in there. Now it's not to your, credit, getting released out of prison, but it was like, holy crap. Like, I can't believe he is actually doing this to me and being real. And, that was, I've never questioned God again.
That was your burning bush moment.
What do you mean by burning bush moment?
Well, it's like, the Bible, Moses comes across this burning bush. I've had many burning bush moments in my life, but I was the one lighting the bush on fire, right? But you said some key words there that I can relate to, that, I'm not a victim. I played the victim role my entire life. And I thought it was justifiable. And I would hang out with people that would co-sign on my resentments, right? And now that I look at it through a different perspective, God's perspective today is that, I grew up and I said, wow, I can't imagine, what my mom went through growing up, with this man. I can't imagine what my dad grew up with as far as the expectations that he was, trained to do. They didn't grow up with any, biblical foundation, as I didn't either. And, I don't have any religious trauma. We just didn't do church or anything like that. But, I can relate to your story is that, God will show up, when it's unexpected. But, there's a word used in the Bible a lot. It's called suddenly. And God will suddenly make a change. And your prayers were answered. I'd say these foxhole prayers, if you're real, come into my life and all that. And it finally shows up. We want things now. And that's a beautiful story, what you just shared there. Yeah, God is real. And so what we do is to make him more real, we get closer to him.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah. It's not that's not how it works.
Yeah.
We don't pray right now and 3 minutes later.
Well, it's just like we get a relationship with a girl, when we start out, man, we are transparent, we're vulnerable, we're creating this intimate relationship, we're listening to them, we're talking to them. And then as the relationship gets older and older, these conversations get smaller and smaller, right? And so what happens is we grow apart. It's no different than, talking, to God that way. It's an intimate relationship where we're talking. And I challenge people who are watching and listening to this, I don't have time for King James Version prayers. I talk to God like I'm talking to you. Hey, God, like before the show, I go in the bathroom and I say, God, put the words in my mouth to say, that can be of service to someone else, to help Dustin, to help the producer, to help, someone listening or watching that can help them to get them to do what you're doing right now. And that's that head nodding up and down. That's where the connection is made. That's where the Spirit's moving. And, these church words that I say now, that are the Spirit moving and, the Word of God and all that. I can't believe I'm saying it, but I deliver it in a different way where I want people to understand it, that we're in my position too. I don't want to be, I don't want to be this religious robot. When it comes to religion, I'm an agnostic. I want nothing to do with it. But when it comes to the Word of God, and they call it the gospel, I'm all about it. I am all about it, and I'm knee deep in it every day. And then I share to the world through my actions, not my words, what it's doing in my life, where someone goes, you know what? I want what he's got. You know what I mean? I want what he's got.
Well, actions always speak louder than words.
Absolutely.
We can always say a word. A word is easy.
Yeah. And so, our faith is measured by feet, not lips. And so, my biggest character defect my whole life was this mouth. I could spit box anybody. I won more fist fights without throwing a punch, right? And now it's my greatest asset because I'm speaking from the heart, the spirit, as opposed to the mind. And then when I do go into relapse behavior, where I start getting into me, and it controls my mouth, I recognize it. That's the big difference. I recognize what I'm doing.
What do you do when you start going into that relapse behavior?
Well, first of all, I recognize it, and then I talk to my mentor, my mentor that I talk to every single day, saying, hey, I'm doing this. And it's always a result of fear.
How important is a mentor in sobriety?
It's huge. I think it's important in everything, someone who has been through it and has that experience, because like people say, I pray to God, but I don't hear him. Okay. Well, God speaks through people, he will speak through people for me to get my answers. And they're simple answers. It's nothing like real laid out, complicated, Christ for me is a very simple person for a complicated person like me. And so it's very simple. And that is, the solution to fear is one thing, and that's to talk about it, and that's what I heard you say at Chili's is that You basically opened up and shared your fear. And every time I do that, it's like, ain't no big deal, and I feel better.
100%.
Yeah.
And at that time, I didn't know that power.
Yeah.
All I knew how to do was hold it in.
Right.
I was never allowed to release it. I was never allowed to be vulnerable. I was growing up as a child. Couldn't really show it.
Yeah. So I speak about this a lot. Fear is an opportunity. And if you break fear down into an acronym, it stands for false evidence appearing real. Right. Especially when you talk to a man. When I talk to a man, I can see, I can recognize this because I do it too, is that you're in a lot of fear, and they'll stud up. I ain't scared of nothing. I said, I didn't say scared. That's a whole different thing. Scared's really happening. Someone's got a gun to my head, right? I'm scared.
That's scared.
I'm concerned, right? But fear is, it's not real. So it's an opportunity for my faith to grow, or it's the opportunity for me to go to prison, right? To relapse. If I don't do anything with the emotion of fear, it turns into a resentment. And if I don't do anything with resentment, it turns into anger, then it turns into rage, then it turns into isolation, then it turns into paranoia. And it can be as simple as, me texting my other half, I love you, right? I didn't ask a question. I just said, I love you. And she doesn't respond. Okay. Now I have a resentment. And here I am, recovery Jesus, going to speak. This has really happened. I'm going to speak to an event. Now I got a resentment. What's that look like today for me? It's like it's internal, like, I'm in resentment. If I don't do anything with resentment, then it turns into anger. I kind of got amped up inside. Really, we going to do this? I sent you a text. I love you. I got expectations, right? Expectations always lead us up to a resentment. The number one cause of the human race, death, resentment, unresolved. If I don't do anything with the real feeling of anger in this simple text, remember, I didn't ask her a question. It turns into rage. I kind of grab the steering wheel a little tighter, all right? If I don't do anything with the feeling of rage, that turns into isolation. Okay, when you text back, I'm not responding. I'm going to punish you. In fact, when I get home, I'm not even talking to you over a simple text. I was just fine that morning. And if I don't do anything with the feeling of isolation, it turns into paranoia. And I'm making up stories in my head that she's run off with somebody else, everything. And I'm like out there. And then, and this is a real story. And I got up and did what I preach about, talk about. The solution to fear is to talk about it. So I'm talking about it in front of this group. And I kid you not, here I am, 6 hours into this text has not responded back. And when I get done speaking, my phone buzzed. And it says, I love you too. I'm so sorry my battery was dead. And I'm like, well, I got needles in my arm and I'm locked up. I need you to come bond me out. Something so little, right?
Yeah.
As a result of unresolved fear turns into that. But guess what? The solution to fear is one thing, is to talk about it, right? Talk about it to another healthy mentor that can relate, and it gets it out, And my mentor would say, bro, you texted her. You didn't ask her a question.
Yeah, you just said
a statement. Tripping.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we talk about it, you know what I mean? And so that right there is so relatable to everybody, not even drug addicts, alcoholics.
But that's a huge thing, especially in this day and age with technology just right here at this fingertips. Right. It's like, same thing. I had a girlfriend, same way. I'm working and I'm busy and I'm not glued to my phone. I'm not always on my phone. Yeah. I'm working.
And neither is she. And I know that.
Yeah. I'm working. And she's like, oh, it took you 6 hours to respond back to me. I'm like, you want me to just wait by my phone for you to text? Like, what the fuck? Like, right. I'm not doing that. Right. I am not waiting by my phone for you to text.
Right.
And she would get pissed.
Right.
And I'm like, what's the big deal? I'm on the phone with you now.
Right. Well, the whole meaning behind that illustration that I painted out was it's these simple things. It's the ants that will drive us to suicide. It's not the elephants in the front yard destroying our landscape. We don't trip about that, but it's the ants that will drive us into suicide. And if we don't talk about it, that's the key.
That's it. And that's the thing, is getting it out in the open. And that's what... And Brandon was not the guy, inspiration for me getting open. Mm-hmm. I just told him a little bit. I didn't tell him everything that went on, just a little bit that happened.
Right.
And it wasn't until I went to military influencer conference.
Yeah.
And I met a guy by the name Dan Manning. And he got up there and had a workshop of storytelling. That's what it's called, storytelling. Mm. And I was like, all right, that's interesting. We'll go see what this guy has to say. And he's a F-18 pilot. Don't quote me on that. So I think he is F-18 pilot, but good guy. Anyway, he's a pilot.
Yeah.
And he was telling a story about how he was in clouds and flew through this, and he got turbulence, and it was jerking him all around. And but how he was telling his story, I was like, wow, I'm mesmerized by this guy's story.
Right.
After I went up to him, said, hey, I was really mesmerized by how you told that story. That's powerful. He's like, oh, hey, I appreciate it. And he looks at me, what's your story? Drop out. And I didn't have to say high school dropout. It's like, oh, just military, retired, and construction business. And now I'm doing coffee. He's like, wow, man, you actually told me nothing. And I was like, what do you want me to tell you? So I did a do-over. And again, he's like, yeah. I was like, well, where do you want me to start? And so I started down my story, and me and him both were in tears.
Yeah.
And he's like, we need to have a conversation. We need to talk.
Yeah.
So end up now 2 months after that military influencer conference, and I'm fuzzy on the details and time frame. But anyway, I went to Veterans of Business Network, and they were having a panel. A panel. It was the failure or the hardships of success, and they asked me to be on it. So I asked them, "Okay, Sean, well, I'll be on it." And we really had these set questions, and he worked with me on my story. And before it, and about an hour before I go up there, I talked to the guy who's the moderator. I said, hey, do you mind if I tell my story? He's like, no. He's like, what are you going to talk about? I was like, oh, how I did this. And I gave him the very tiny brief. And I went up there and told my story. First time, I've never told my story publicly, never went out about it. And there was 250 people in this room.
Wow.
I was scared.
Yeah.
But I also had some imposter syndrome. I was scared. Now, what if I say it? They don't believe me. What if they laugh at me? What if I don't get it? Nobody pays attention. Everybody's just on their phone. What if it doesn't resonate? All these if-isms.
Right.
I was so scared. Well, I've never had my palms sweaty and my feet sweaty, but I was sweating up a storm. Get up on stage and I tell my story from start to finish. And at the end of it, nobody comes and talks to me. Now I have this instant regret of telling my story. And not one person came up and said, damn, dude, you went through a lot. I'm glad you're here. So I went and kind of hid out in our VIP room, changed my shirt, went back out there. About an hour later, still nothing. And it wasn't until about 4 hours later, because there was a whole bunch of workshops still going on. About 4 hours later, people are like coming and finding me like, oh my God, I had a grown man, 6'5", start talking to me about his story. And we start crying together. Yeah. And I'm just like, oh my God. And I'm looking at this guy, this is a bear of a man.
Yeah.
And then other people start coming up to me.
Right.
To this day, that event we go to, people are like, dude, your story has impacted me. Your story has impacted the way it has changed my life, has changed the way I interact with my kids, to change the way now I do my business. Also, a couple of people at that event were there suicidal and got them help. I honestly was not prepared for that moment in my life.
Right.
I wasn't prepared for me to tell my story to somebody come to me and go, hey, I need help.
Yeah.
Totally unprepared for that. Now I'm prepared. Now, if they do that again, I'm like, I got you. I got the resources. But going back to that word fear, I was fearful that nobody would be like, I would instant regret.
It goes back to is that we have expectations. So when I have expectations, when I set expectations, okay, I'm going to end up with a resentment. Okay. True acceptance has, no resentments. When I speak and people who want to speak, they ask me, do you lay it all out? Do you plan it? And I say, no. I said, simply when I tell my story, it's what it was like, what happened, and what it's like today. What it was like is about that much of my story. What happened is the hook. And what it's like today is the huge part of my story. And that's what's so attractive, because they are attracted to your story because everybody loves a story of redemption.
Yep.
Okay. Everybody loves a story of seeing a man or a woman that's in solution today. We don't like stories of hearing I'm the victim. It's kind of like, hey, when the pain gets bad enough and you accept the role that you play in it, then you'll have a story. And that was me for my whole life. I'd much rather have been right than happy,
Absolutely.
And so, that's how how I deliver it today. And what's great about it is when I speak, and the sound, hope you understand, is that I'm not doing this show with you today. I'm doing it for me. It helps me. It gets me out of self. It gets me out of my head. Like this interview right now that we're doing, I haven't once thought about the future. I haven't once thought about the past. I haven't once thought about committing suicide. Why? Because I'm out of self and I'm right here, right now in the safest place in the world, because this is where God's at. And I don't want anything. I don't want anything from you. We talked, my mission is real simple. It's not to influence other people. It's not to make friends, to be popular. My mission is to share with everyone through my experience, to start seeing life through God's perspective, not the world's perspective.
How they do that?
How did they do that?
Yes.
To see it through God? Well, it's to make that commitment to get out of self and seek the invisible for the first time to fix their visible problems. See, my whole life, I was seeking visible things to fix my invisible problems. And so once I made that decision and it was made for me and I understood it, I'm a whole new person.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
What is your, we touched on this a little bit in mentorship, and you said that's everything in sobriety, right? Because it's accountability.
Well, it's also everything in the workplace. You have a mentor, your new job. It's very important that, someone who becomes a Christian, right? And they feel this thing and they're on fire, is to immediately get a mentor that's solid, that's not Christianese, you know what I mean? But that's solid, that can walk you through it, to prepare you, as opposed to like, I'm a Christian, now I'm going to go be a preacher and I'm going to go, open up all this stuff. Becoming a Christian is to basically work through your program and say, okay, now I've accepted Christ and I need to do an inventory on myself. I need to repent and confess and then make amends and all these things. And after a result of that, then we go give it away and we can help people who struggle with resentments and struggle with anger. And we can provide solutions based off of what was given to us.
One thing that I've always struggled with, and I've always seen people, and this is my family too, like you spoke, with alcoholism and drug addicts. But my two older kids' mother is a drug addict and a gambler. Mm-hmm. And she goes through these bouts of sobriety, but she never a program, no program, no 12 steps, no mentorship. How do people stay sober? And I know it's on them, but what's the tools they can use to help them stay sober?
Well, sober is a powerful word. Okay. There's what's called dry and there's sober. I had my last drink and drug May 29th, 2017. Have I been sober every minute since? No. I mean, there's some thoughts that I have and there's some character defects that creep back up, but sobriety is recognizing them now, right? That fear and that angst, and I recognize it, For for someone to get sober, it's they make that commitment. First is admit that you're powerless over blank. It could be alcohol, drugs, whatever visible thing that has got your life unmanageable and you're powerless over it, which means like, I'm not going to drink today. And I end up getting drunk again today. And I'm like, wait a minute, I can't do this. The second thing is to get into a support group of like people who can relate, where you feel safe. That's why when you go to these 12, I don't wave any flag for any support group, I protect their anonymity, but they had these support group meetings that I attend and they go, and that's when you say, I'm Michael, I'm an alcoholic, or Michael, I'm a drug addict. And it makes them feel safe, that they're in the right room and there's a connection, and then you work these steps of learning to trust God, clean house, and then help others. And you have to have a mentor to do that. You cannot do that alone.
No, there's no way.
And men work with men and women work with women. That is paramount.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think you can walk this thing, this road that's not paved and it's going to be full of potholes alone.
And for the loved ones, that drugs and alcohol aren't their choice. How can they help? Is they do it by their actions, not their words. They go work a program, because for the loved ones, the person in their family that is in addiction, you can't tell them, you have to show them, so they become your drug of choice. For the moms and dad, Junior becomes their dope. That's their drug because they're doing everything they can to fix it. I mean, having an addict in the family is like throwing a hand grenade in the middle of a family reunion and all the family members jump on the hand grenade, because actually the family members actually become more sick than the addict.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what do you want people to take away, man? What's the takeaway that you want?
I guess the takeaway, from what I'm doing is that is to admit that we're all addicts, and to know that there is the invisible that is the solution, and for me, it's Christ. It works for me. I'm not this guy that goes around and says, you must accept Jesus Christ or you're not going to heaven. I don't have that kind of power, right? I don't sit there and go, hey, Into the Rock, in the first quarter brought 400 people to Jesus Christ. No, I don't have that kind of power. You know what I mean? But my takeaway is real simple. I just continue reading to people, just like I did Uwe. That's what I do, is I just continue telling my story, and I'm being transparent and sharing stories of walking through the day going, I see why God allowed that to happen.
Are you going to write a book?
I am.
Is it going to be named Uwe?
No. We're working on the name. And
wouldn't that be a perfect name for it? Like Uwe,
Yeah. So we're going to make the announcement real soon. It's one of the reasons why I'm in California. We were in LA on Monday, and a well-known writer, screenplay, talking about book and movie. It's been a very exciting week. And once again, they came to me. You know what I mean? It's like I didn't. Writing a book has never been in my game plan. A movie has never been in my game plan. My game plan is, I don't have a game plan. If I make a game plan, we're all going to prison, okay? I don't have it. It's just to continue to serve and to use my personal daily experiences and share with the world going, hey, this bad thing I thought was bad, this detour happened in my life today, but I looked at it through God's perspective, and this is what I learned from it. Yeah. I can't wait to tell you, both my arms are blown off, but I can't wait to tell you how great God used this story so I can tell other people how great he is. But I don't have any arms, but we good. We Gucci. We're fine. I didn't need him anyways. So that's my mission.
You've been on the road, man.
Yes.
So, and I'm just thankful you're in San Diego and you'd be willing to come on the show here. And man,
can I share something really cool?
Yes.
So we just moved to a new house, and I had no idea where to get my hair cut, right? So I just get on Google Maps, salon near me, and it's a Monday, so most places are closed. And I walk in this place, and this lady's here, and you could tell it's all girl. It's like cut and color and all that stuff. I was like, I'm in the wrong place, and she says, "No, I can cut your hair." So she cut my hair, and we're talking or anything like that, just a little bit, and I'm real quiet. I'm real quiet outside of here, and so I ended up showing her my I Am Second. I Am Second did a film on me, a 9-minute film that it's gotten over 30 million views on all these platforms. And so she watched it, and she just had tears coming down her eyes, And she wasn't even supposed to be there that day. I get a text from her like at 3 a.m. Okay. And she says, "You were supposed to be there that day because I was really having really serious thoughts of just not wanting to be on this planet anymore." And as a result of that, her close friend is Brandy, and Brandy's the one that connected us. And I said, I'm going to be in California, in LA. And so Brandy connected you and I in another show here in San Diego that I was on earlier this week. And as a result of that, I get to share my story on these different platforms as a result of me just being transparent and honest to a chick that was cutting my hair that impacted her life. And here all this happens. And so I see it through God's perspective. When I look through it, the old me, it's all about me. I would have never even thought about Stephanie who cut my hair. It would have been about me. I'm like, wow, God, I see what you're doing. I see what you're doing. And how it's affecting her life. And
how's she doing today?
It's great. Like Lee McGuire, who's the president of our nonprofit, she went and got her hair, colored by her. They've become very good friends. And Lee she has such an impact on my life and helping me. And she's, they become friends, and she's helping her. They're talking. That's it. Yeah. You know what I mean? Just chopping it up, texting, and Lee's in solution, and she's got a great story, and it's just beautiful that seeing things through God's perspective, just in that one little situation, brought me to you.
That is so crazy.
I just went to get a haircut.
Go get a hair. You're, not normal barber, but finding a new one close to home.
Yeah, and it
led you to here.
Yeah, I was coming here anyways, and then it was just
that's just the connection.
Happens to me every day. And when I see these things happening, these are the stories I share on my platforms. And it has nothing to do with drugs and alcohol. Yeah. It's because I'm looking at life through God's perspective and not mine.
So Into the Rock, what is that?
So Michael Molthan is MM, so M2. And the rock, I came up with the rock because I realized that every time I was hitting rock bottom, and this is in the book Detours, every time I was hitting rock bottom, I realized that the rock at the bottom at all these times was God. So I stayed at the bottom, and I let people like Uwe, and I let godly men pull me out of the bottom, because the tools that got me to rock bottom, anger, resentment, rage, revenge, were the same tools I was using to get out of rock bottom. I'm never going to drink alcohol and do drugs again, but I'm going to show you, and the Rocky music would play in my head, dun, 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 dun. And I had it all planned. I'm going to show you, I'm going to come back and take over the real estate industry and all that. And I set up expectations, and God said, So at the end of the day, God set the bond, and he gave Jesus the key, and he put it in the gate and set me free. And he can do that for everyone.
Dude, yes, 100% he can.
Yeah.
He also gave you a really badass name. I mean, that is
it's stuck. And so
when I saw Into the Rock, I was like, damn.
Yeah.
I like how that sounds.
Yeah.
That's
stuck.
And then I Am Second. You touched on the video.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean though? I am second.
Christ is first, and I'm second. And if I get that out of order, if I make today, if I make it about me, okay, I'm going to the penitentiary, right? But if I serve him, okay, don't put my name in your mouth. Just go show the world who I am. Go show the world who I am. And apparently it's helping me.
What's next for you?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I really don't. And here's a guy that, ran a successful business, and I was forecasting and, doing all these things. I do exactly what God told me. And he says, just walk. So I'm just walking, just following my feet. And I'm not Pollyanna, I mean, it's like we talked about earlier. It's like, okay, Michael, I got a plan. I got to look into the future. Absolutely. But I take someone else with me that is on the same path, a mentor, a godly man with me. And when I do that, I get the feeling of hope. And if I go into the past with this same man together, all right, I get the feeling of gratitude. And that's where it's at.
Michael, you're a badass, man.
No, so are you.
You really are.
You got a great story.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
This is about you. This isn't about me. We have to get these things out here.
Yeah.
Because
Let me ask you this.
All right.
Did you think about committing suicide at all during this show?
No.
Why?
I don't think about committing suicide ever.
Just a show.
No. Okay. Absolutely not. Because I'm present.
There you go.
I'm present.
You're out of self.
Yep.
Isn't that amazing?
I'm being present. Yeah.
And so how do we do that after the show? For the listeners and followers that ask that question, how do I get into the now? The way we get into the now is to serve someone. It could be as simple as just send 3 text messages out to 3 people, have a great day. Just do that, and it gets us in the now. It's serving.
I think we could talk for hours.
Mm-hmm.
Because not only are you doing that, but imagine if you sent that text message out and it was somebody who needed it.
Yep.
You may think you picked it. It's probably God picking them. He just showed you who to pick.
Yep. It's that simple thing.
It's that powerful. It's that little things. Those little gestures can change somebody's life.
Yeah. Hey, I was just thinking about you. I haven't talked to you in a while, and I just wanted to I was thinking about you. I have a great day.
That's it. In this life right now, especially, I think it's so easy to talk about the suicide ideology because of how prevalent it is on our smartphones. It's always in our face. One thing that I say is somebody's going through something. Don't be afraid to ask them if they're suicidal.
Yeah.
You asking them the question is not going to make them suicidal.
That's a great point. That's a really good point.
It won't make them suicidal. Yeah. It's not going to make them like, well, I wasn't now, but might as well end it today.
Yeah.
No, they're going to give you an answer, and it's usually going to be clear cut and you can tell.
Right.
No, I'm not suicidal.
Right.
Or they're going to be like,
what are you talking about?
What?
Yeah, right. No.
You're like, wow, I didn't say no. And we hide this because we're all this superhero in our own movie. And what we're talking about is going out. And when I was in that headspace, I would walk out of my house, put the cape on.
Right.
Boom.
Right.
Everybody's like, dude, Dustin's got the life.
Right.
He's got whatever going on, cars, everything else. But when I walked back in my house, complete disarray and shambles. Mm-hmm. I was barely a functioning human being. Yeah.
The common denominator in my personal experience of depression, when I get in depression or bouts of it or suicidal thoughts, the common denominator every single time is I'm thinking about me. Every time. That's the common denominator.
I'm going to have to reflect on that.
Yeah. I'm thinking about me. And so the way I came up with that is looking at it through God's perspective. I'm like, God, I got to stop. I'm thinking about me, And sometimes, I remember I was real comfortable with that. A lot of, I remember just being comfortable being in morbid reflection and angry. It was a drug to me. It was a drug. And today I don't live that life.
No, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And one of the things is, even if you stop thinking about suicidality, it doesn't mean it's not going to creep back up in your life.
Well, and for, there's non-believers, and there's, me being this new creature in Christ, and as a believer, it's called spiritual warfare is what it is. And that's where the thoughts come into my mind, in my own voice, and it's not real.
No, it's not, and you got to continually to work on it.
Yep.
It's getting
but it's recognizing it now. That's what the cool thing is. It's recognizing it, and it's all a result of me thinking about me, and it's a result of fear. Yeah. Fear, financial insecurity. I'm in the future alone in my head. So
that's awesome, man. Michael, thank you again for coming on the show. You're a badass. Where can people find you?
Just go to m2therock.com. That's our website. It's the letter M, the number 2, the rock, ROCK.com, and all of our social media platforms are there. We're on all the social media platforms, M2 The Rock. And so come see me. And we're on all the podcast channels, and then a special shout out to all the inmates that will be listening to this behind the walls, that there's hope. You're free.
That's it. Stay sober, be present,
and help others.
Yeah. You're a badass, Michael. You really are, man. And badass people deserve some badass coffee, man.
All right.
So
what I need.
You get some red, white, brewed.
Oh, thank you so much. And we'll I'll take a picture of this. We'll post it on our social media platforms.
Oh, man.
Thank you so much. And I appreciate what you're doing.
I appreciate it, man.
Yeah. Thank you for your service.
I thank you so much. Yeah. So stay tuned, because we are now wrapping it up, but it's not done. We are going to be on Patreon, and we're going to have an exclusive interview after the show with Michael. So go to our Patreon, subscribe, be a member. Also, subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit like, and also share it. Share it. And if you got comments, we want to hear them, because we want to know what you think. So again, thank you for watching Coffee Conversations, a Badasses podcast. If you have a heroic story and you'd like to share it, get in contact with us. Our information's in the bio. Also, don't forget to hit the subscribe, like, and share. And then I'll see you on the next episode, badasses.